Absolutely. And just for any listeners out there that are, interested or have been affected by an aviation accident or know someone that has, or anybody that watches this podcast or is learning about more information, what does it cost to hire an aviation law expert like yourself? Who pays? I mean, these experts, we both work cases. So Keith and I are both on the federal court practice committee together. We both represent plaintiffs only. We only represent people. So we go up against, obviously, the Goliaths, the government, big insurance, big corporations. The experts cost a ton of money. Who advances all those costs? What does it cost for a family to hire you to represent them?
So we do. We forward all those costs. The family, it's kind of like, a car accident case. You've probably seen ads on the news or not the news, but on TV where people say, look, you don't have to pay us anything, as if that's some special incentive. You don't have to pay, plaintiffs' attorneys anyways, when it's usually like an injury case, because you're allowed to do contingency fee contracts. Certain types of cases, you can't do a contingency fee contract. Family law, criminal law, it can't be based on the outcome.
Sure.
Whereas in injury work, wrongful death, plaintiff's work, product liability, these are all cases that we look at the case, we evaluate it, and if we think it has a chance of success, sometimes even when we aren't sure if it's going to have a chance of success, we will sign up the case, meet with the client, explain to them, look, either this is a great case and you don't have to pay us anything up front. Here's what you pay if we win. The amount, the percentages of what you get if you win, as you know, those are all mandated by law in Florida and,
right.
and by the Florida bar. And most states do the same thing. The percentages might vary state to state, but for the most part, that's how it works. But yeah, we have to make a business decision, just like any other business, that these cases aren't cheap. The experts, they charge a lot of money to look at the case, and we pay that. We front all the money, and that only gets paid back to us if we win or we resolve the case. So we have to make a business decision that we can't just sue every case that comes in. We got to say, whether or not there's a chance of success here. And one of the hard parts about aviation law is the insurance aspect. A lot of these general aviation accidents, which are primarily what you see because commercial aviation for the most part is very safe. You see a lot of, it could be corporate aircraft, it could be military aircraft. You don't worry about as much because if you're bringing a case in that aspect, it's usually involves the government or a product liability case where it's a big manufacturer. So you're not really worried about the insurance. But any of these cases that involve, let's say somebody who charters a flight and charters a flight to the Bahamas. Well, that, the company that's the charter company might not have adequate insurance. They might not have any money. They might be going broke. The pilots usually don't have their own insurance. The maintainers of these aircraft usually don't have insurance.
Wow.
So one of the biggest problems with general aviation accidents is figuring out if somebody did something wrong, first, who was it? Do they have insurance? Because if you sue somebody and get a judgment and there's no insurance, then you're basically have a piece of paper that's not worth anything. And so that factors into the decision of how we determine if this is a case that we can bring. And, we might investigate a case for a couple of years. We almost have to if we're waiting on the NTSB to determine what caused the accident, because we can't look at the aircraft until they're done with it. And once they're done with it, we'll tell the investigator that we're representing somebody in the accident, and generally they'll call us or send us a message that says, look, we've released the aircraft. You guys can, inspect it now. So we might have to take and the NTSB has a different mission than we do. They're looking to make safety recommendations to the FAA. So they're not looking at every person that might be responsible or looking at, so this isn't a knock on the NTSB. They have limited assets, just
Sure.
like a lot of government agencies. But their mission's different than ours. And so even if the NTSB makes a decision as to, what the cause of the accident is, we might still have our experts go out and look at the aircraft and make our own determination, which happens a lot, because the NTSB's determination isn't admissible in court. So their probable cause determination, when they say, hey, we believe this was the pilot's fault, or we believe that a part failed, you can use a lot of the information and the inspections and stuff and the testing that they use. You can use that in court. Your experts can use it, but you can't parrot the NTSB's, or you can't use the NTSB's probable cause determination. So you're not bound by it, which can be good in some situations and bad in some situations. If it's good for your client, you want to use it. If it's bad for your client, you don't want to come in anyways, and your experts may have a different opinion. So,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think that what you just said is one of the biggest challenges that we face as plaintiff attorneys is if we have a client call a law firm before us, or we have a client read online, they might, cast out their case before they even get it in front of somebody that could actually figure out what's going on. So
Right.
the point here, folks, is do not give up. Make sure you call the right person, because I've got some insurance clients that they've called 5 law firms, and thank God these clients will not give up. So by the time they call me and I accept it, they're like, okay, great,
Yeah.
and then
Are you sure?
yeah, and then we get it resolved. But the problem is they just were talking to the wrong attorney, right? It'd be
Right.
like talking to me about, if somebody called me and said, hey, Chris, I just got a DUI, I'd be like, oh, that's unfortunate. But I know a
Right.
great criminal defense attorney, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to take that on, and I'm certainly not going to pretend like I know. But I always try to take it from a standpoint of, okay, if that was my family friend that was in, had a business dispute or something like that, I got to find somebody that can help them.
Right.
And I think with aviation law, anybody that's watching this, they need to call someone like you. And the other thing that you need to know too, folks, is that attorneys like Keith and I, even though we're licensed in a particular state, we partner with local counsel all over the country. I mean, we both take cases in federal court all over the country.
Right.
And we can do that because the state and federal law, as long as obviously the court grants us permission, would allow us, if we are in a state where we're not licensed, to partner up or co-counsel with
Right.
a local firm, right? Is that what you do? So if you had a case, say, in think of a jurisdiction you're not licensed, is that what you would do if you had an accident there?
And aviation law lends itself to that. I mean, we have a case in Kenya right now.
All right, we got to talk about that. How do you?
Well,
How do you
that's
start?
actually one of my partners who just retired. But yeah, I mean, so he had to get admitted into Kenya, but he's still got local counsel in Kenya. And, that's not the ideal situation. That just was a case where there were no ties even to like England or Europe. It was basically just got, the only ties were to Africa. And so one of my partners has had to go over there and it's very different how they do things over there. But it's good. I mean, they handle their court well, but they don't have the resources we have here. So it's taken years. I mean, this case has gone on forever. But yeah, I mean, what you say is absolutely right. Like, even if you know an attorney, call that attorney and say, if you have a type of case, ask them for a referral, because most likely they're going to know somebody that does that type of law. And in aviation law, it's no different. But we have cases all over the country. Our office is only a couple blocks from the Duval County Courthouse. I don't think I have one case in Duval County right now. And I do other stuff besides just aviation. But me personally, I see judges at conferences. They're like, "Where you been?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in Melbourne, and I'm in Arizona, and I'm in Delaware, and I'm in Washington State or Colorado," because aviation accidents, you're looking at, is it the man, is it the machine, or is it basically the weather, and it's going to be one of those things. So if it's the machine, you got to look at, okay, is it the maintainer, and where are they located? And planes obviously fly all over, and they might be getting their maintenance done in another state. They're not always just done locally. If it's a part and the part failed and you think it's a design defect, or you think it's something happened in the manufacturing process that weakened the part, you might have to sue that manufacturer where they're at home. And based on long-arm jurisdiction precedent, you can't just sue them always where the accident occurred. So, a lot of companies are incorporated in Delaware. They do that for the tax benefits. So they might have their home base in, Colorado, but they might be also incorporated in Delaware. And so you might be looking at the laws of Delaware and looking at the laws of Arizona and figuring out, okay, where's my case going to be stronger? What's my jury pool there? You might research verdicts in that area to see, okay, are the verdicts better in this state? Do I know local counsel do I know an attorney up there I think will do a good job? What are the judges like? So you consider a lot of these things, but every aviation accident involves, choice of law decisions. If I file in this state, what law is going to apply? And what law is going to apply to the liability portion of the case, as in, whose fault the accident was, and whose law is going to apply to the damages, because my clients might be Floridians, but their case is going to be in front of a Delaware judge or, a Washington, D.C. judge or wherever it's filed. So those are all the considerations you got to make once you even figure out who you think is at fault. If it's the federal government, if you think like, okay, an air traffic controller gave this pilot bad instructions or didn't respond correctly when this pilot declared an emergency, the federal government, what you do is you have to go through an administrative claim process before you ever file a lawsuit. And that takes a while. And you have to wait for the government to either got to wait for 6 months after they get the claim, if they don't make a decision, before you can file a lawsuit, or you have to, or once they deny it, then you have a period of time within which you have to file a lawsuit. And if you don't follow those administrative claim, rules and laws precisely, you lose your case. So these are all the different things you got to look at as you're looking at these accidents once you figure out who you think is at fault.
And some of the parts, right? And this is, again, do not count yourself out. You got to call an attorney that knows what they're doing and can truly and properly evaluate this, because I'm thinking about all of the companies that are getting into space flight. I'm imagining, all right, Keith, we're going to send you up to orbit. You'll do a couple rotations and we're going to bring you back down, but you got to sign this waiver. This waiver says, when we explode this thing, 2 minutes into flight, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
You and I both know, you better hope that is, you did absolutely everything proper, because those waivers usually aren't going to prohibit a lawsuit, right? But a family that doesn't know that, the company says, look, your loved one signed a waiver.
Right. Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah. And the other thing that comes in a lot, and we're dealing with this with a couple cases right now, the Miami Air accident that happened in Jacksonville a couple years ago, where the plane coming from Cuba went to the water. We've got a number of passengers on that aircraft, and you got to try to make a determination. All right, on international flights, you have international treaties that might apply, and so we're in a debate on that case right now, or that's been briefed in front of a local federal judge as to whether or not it's this Montreal Convention, which can limit your rights, can limit the types of damages you can get. Or whether or not it's Florida law, or that actually can give you more damages than you might be entitled to under the convention. Same thing, like flying to the Bahamas. We have an accident that occurred in Fort Lauderdale from an aircraft coming from the Bahamas, and people got on the flight and there was an accident, and some of them are injured, and they don't necessarily know what their rights are. And again, there's another international treaty that applies to that limits their damages. So, yeah, these are all things that it's complicated. I tell people, look, just talk to an attorney first, even if the NTSB report comes out and says that it was, this was the cause, you should still call an attorney. So, at Spoor and Dobb, we look at cases. I spent 2 years on a case involving a midair military accident over Japan, over the Sea of Japan, that ultimately there wasn't a case there. There was nothing we could do, but it was rewarding to be involved and help the mother of this, this F-18 pilot go through the process. Sat there with the generals that briefed her about the actions of her son and this accident. And initially they had blamed her son. And after a excellent Politico kind of investigative report came out, and we were also pushing from a legal side to get more information from the accident investigation that we didn't see in there, they hadn't provided. They reopened the investigation. And that type of pressure, ultimately what they determined was her son, although he shared some fault, I'm not going to say he was faultless, was not like solely to blame. He wasn't unqualified. So we went through the whole process. Ultimately, I had to say, ma'am, I'm sorry, you know, I can't bring a case for you, but I hope that you feel better about, you know, what you've learned, the fact that they've changed the determination from the military. And she was, you know, that she was like, look, I appreciate, you know, most people wouldn't have gone through this and never been paid a dime for it. So sometimes that's what we do. You know, that's not great for business, but at the same time, it can be. You know, she may refer a case to us in the future. That's not why I was doing it. I was doing it because I really was hoping there could be a case there. But ultimately, you know, when you're in the military and you get in an accident and, you know, it's determined to be, it could be your co-pilot's fault, it could be a crew member's fault, it could be the command structure, it could be maintenance. But the Ferries Doctrine prevents you from suing the military, right, even if the military is completely negligent.
We run into that in some of the military misdiagnosis or medical
Right.
malpractice, right? FARAS, you know, FARAS, for those of you that have never heard of that, FARAS is the one that limits you from suing the
Right.
government. The way that we use it is they say, well, it dates back to Vietnam. Somebody is in a combat zone and they have, you know, some sort of either medical or some sort of treatment that goes wrong, right? They're in the middle of a combat zone and they have some sort of medical procedure that goes awry. Can't sue the government for that. How that's expanded over the years is you got somebody here, you know, in the U.S. in a completely safe environment that gets completely screwed over.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, can't sue over that.
Yeah,
Which,
I mean,
if it was a civilian case,
right.
I mean, they're lighting up a 7-8 figure case probably.
The original you know, it made sense. The original use of it was they didn't want people like attorneys coming in and second guessing, you know, officers' commands. Like if an officer says, take this hill or, you know, fly this helicopter into this place and everybody gets killed or injured in that accident, you can't go sue the officer for doing that. They don't. So that's kind of the original intent of it. But you're right. It's expanded to a point where if you're on active duty and it could be some, you know, something that's completely benign but causes, as far as like making wartime decisions, it might not involve that at all. And now you're prohibited from bringing any kind of case. What we do with those cases is we look a lot to see, you know, especially if it involves a vehicle or an aircraft, because most of those they're not built by the military. They're not designed by the military. The military usually tells a contractor, look, we're looking for this type of airplane that does close air support. And then they get bidders come in and they go through the whole process of that. And the military will have a say in some of the design, but they're not designing it. You know, they're kind of saying, okay, this fits our criteria. It's got to do A, B, and C. If it does that, then we'll buy it from you for this price. So there's another defense. There's another defense that government contractors get to use. And so that's kind of where that comes into play. And what they'll say is, look, we fall into the shoes of the government because we design this according to their precise specifications. And so in certain cases, that can prohibit you from bringing a case against the contractor. And we had a real big case on that involving Blackwater, where they tried to do that. And we were actually successful. They flew a plane into the side of a mountain that killed a colonel. And our firm sued Blackwater before I was there. It went up to the 11th Circuit, and you know they appealed it, and we won. And basically, what they were saying is like, look, we were doing exactly what the military said. We were, you know, basically we are the U.S. government. We're part of the military, and the military did not, you know, the government didn't come in to defend them on that. They had to have their own attorneys. And ultimately, what the court decided is like, no, listen, you guys decided the route you were going to fly. You guys decided, you know, how to conduct this mission. And so it's kind of a narrow lane for success sometimes, but you got to, understand what the law prohibits. You also got to have a good understanding of the type of military operations and the flight operations. And, you know, that's where, you know, at least as far as myself, I feel I can bring my experience in the military and aviation, aviation maintenance and the way that those types of flights are conducted to investigate cases like that and take a deeper look where, another aviation firm might have said, look, we just don't think there's anything here. Get a second opinion. It's just like if a doctor tells you got cancer and you want a second opinion, do the same thing with your case, because we have numerous cases where we've taken a second look at something or third or fourth look and found something and brought a case, and then the firm that sent it to us, the next case they have, they don't send it to us because they're like, let's keep looking at it. That's happened a couple times. So
that's what we preach about on this show every week. Second opinion,
Yeah.
And I'd love to have you back, because that government contractor defense that you're talking about, I think, is also what 3M and Aero tried to use in the dual-ended combat earplug litigation.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think they've been successful with that defense. I mean, you're involved in some of that litigation, but we'd love to have you back to talk about more of the 3M type stuff. The hard part about military cases is that we've got all of these different codes and laws and federal statutes and benefits that are available to, somebody that served in Vietnam compared to Iraq is going to have completely different benefits and rights available. So obviously with those earplugs, 03 to 15, right? I mean, we've got sort of a narrow window, but would love to chat more about that sometime. But I think we are getting close to the end here.
We might be.
Casey?
Yeah. By the way, we should say if you have a aviation law question, need the help of Keith, give him a call, 904-309-6500. Sometimes I can't read my own writing. A lot of exclusive content on the podcast this week. You can find it on Chris's website, broshulaw.com.